Well, today's Tuesday, December 11th. And that means we're in for more technology news. This is going to be government and social.
Which often go together, not because they're all that related, but because it just works out that way with the amount of stories.
Now, after the last 2 weeks of Facebook stories, we put a moratorium on Facebook stories, but things have gotten so bad for Facebook that we have to laugh about it.
I think those are great stories.
They are.
It's going to be a lot of fun. But first, I'd say probably in the history of the Level 1 news, the number one lead-off story is Ajit Pai.
This is the Ajit Pai show, I guess. Ajit Pai buries 2-year-old speed test data in the appendix of a 762-page report. So the story here is that the FCC under Tom Wheeler used to release a bunch of reports about broadband and mobile access and a whole bunch of things at different times during the year. Well, since Ajit Pai took office, they haven't released much of anything. And so he's saying, look, we're putting this all in one convenient report that only comes out once in a blue moon. And that's better, right?
But there's more to that story because last week we talked about, I can't remember which website it was, but somebody did some investigative reporting and went to the company that collates all that data and asked them, they're like, hey, why did you stop doing this? And the company happily admitted, we never stopped doing that. We've submitted those reports every year, as asked.
The appendix for the 2017 report is written as if it was written in 2017. So they've just been sitting on it forever.
Yeah, so probably they put it in that big report because they've now been found out.
Yeah.
And that's been their MO.
There have been FOIA requests. Like, they've been so slow that there have been freedom of information requests.
But they ignored those.
Yeah, they did.
But you can't ignore it once you get ratted out by the company that's actually doing the work.
Yeah.
So now everybody knows it exists. You got to tell them about it. So what do? You're buried in a report during the holiday season.
And then the next thing happened, which is also really fun. The FCC to probe whether carriers gave inaccurate broadband coverage data. Now, this is similar to that report, but this is not exactly the same thing. So this is a bunch of carriers reporting to the FCC what their coverage is. And they're basically, so there's these subsidies that we always talk about. There's about $10 billion left in that fund for adding internet access and coverage in rural areas. And there's this kind of process where different companies will sort of bid on it. But the bidding is sort of this dystopian ass backwards thing where it's like, oh, we've got this many customers in our area and we think we can cover this many customers for this amount of dollars. And then the government will give them those dollars. But as we've learned on the Level 1 news, in the history of ever, that has never ever happened. Anytime the government has done that, it has not worked out. Like, no promises have ever actually been kept. Ever.
So this is the infamous map that they talk about, the broadband map. And it is supposed to show them what areas need attention. But everybody knows that it's horribly flawed.
Yeah.
And it shows coverage where there is none. And in fact, the New York Times did a little investigating and they found out, sure enough, it's all incorrect. And there's way more people than anybody thought who are living without broadband.
The methodology, I would go so far as to say that the methodology that the SEC has adopted is deliberately misleading because if one address in one zip code is covered, the entire footprint of that entire zip code is considered covered. And that is blatantly dishonest from the start. So how can you possibly not overrepresent the number of addresses that have coverage?
And you might be thinking, wow, it seems like it's a bad week for Ajit Pai, right? did he piss somebody off? Did he not make his payment this month? And it's just going to get worse.
The FBI is now investigating fake anti-net neutrality comments. I'm surprised by this. Well, I'm surprised for two reasons. One, why did it take this long? And number two, when we originally reported on this years ago, we said, hey, isn't this identity theft? How is it possible that whoever did this is able to get away with it? Is it because it's, from inside the government?
Well, a lot of the repeal of net neutrality, one of the things that it did that a lot of people don't like is it took a lot of things out of the hands of the FCC, put them in the hands of the FTC. And hey, maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe they're not captured and maybe they'll do a better job. Well, we've got a new top dog at the FTC And there's some interesting news.
I want to, like, the FTC being in charge of this is like the Forestry Service being in charge of speeding tickets. I mean, come on. But the FTC's top consumer protection official can't go after Facebook or 100 other companies. And the reason for that is a conflict of interest. So the current lead of the FTC was a lawyer for a law firm that represented a lot of huge companies, including Facebook, Microsoft, and a whole bunch of AT&T, I think. Equifax. Maybe not AT&T, actually. Equifax and a whole bunch of other companies. And because of that, they are not allowed, like the whole revolving door thing. Like the FTC could theoretically investigate those companies, but that guy can't be involved with that.
Yeah, he's made statements that, hey, the FTC is really busy, and just because it's these 100 companies, I'm still going to have plenty to do. But a lot of people come back with it's like, but these are the ones that need attention. The top dog is going to go after, mom and pop grocery delivery somewhere. And you're going to leave Facebook and Equifax to the underlings?
Hey, the Forestry Service is really important. I just don't think that them managing speeding tickets makes a lot of sense.
Well, speeding tickets don't make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. We talked about facial recognition. We got Amazon in the game. We've got Palantir watching everybody. Homeland Security is getting into it. Airports and
Palantir is making money hand over fist. They are hiring people like crazy.
And we've got, across the pond, the EU's loving them. Well, now we can add one more. And it seems like maybe you would have started with this one.
The Secret Service wants to add test facial recognition around the White House. And when they say around the White House, they mean around the White House, like the context of a Yo Mama's joke.
They mean Washington, D.C. and Virginia.
And the river and maybe Maryland, like the entire state of Maryland.
So they point out that a lot of people expressed interest in killing the president. That's fair enough. Although I'm a firm believer. Now, of course, it's the crazies. Like the crazies, when you bring the crazies into the equation, I kind of get it. But at the same time, I think the best government is the government who is terrified of us.
The problem, that is true. I would agree with that. The problem with this technology is that they're going to treat it a little bit like Harrison Ford in Blade Runner, where like when the facial recognition technology goes off, they're just going to shoot first and ask questions later. So
I think they already do that at the White House.
The article also mentioned that there's been a 28% failure rate. So like when they were doing facial recognition on members of Congress, it matched 28% of them to people with a mugshot. So that had an open warrant or whatever.
Is it failure or is it just, clairvoyance?
Is that like Minority Report style? It's like, oh, these people are wanted.
Pretty sure these people are criminals. I can't figure out why. Well, Senator Warner, we talk about, what's the other guy? The guy that's always hammering them on.
That one guy, Wyden, Ron Wyden. Yeah,
Wyden. He's a filthy socialist, but when it comes to technology, he seems like he knows more than the rest of them. But Warner, I feel like this is another one of those sort of, he's just barking.
Yes.
And he's not really saying anything, but it kind of sounds good.
Senator Warren calls for the U.S. cyber doctrine new standards for security. We have a long way to go on cyber hygiene and online media consumption habits, say Virginia Democrat Mark Warner. Now, he's talking about all the data breaches and like the Equifaxes of the world and this kind of thing. I really wish that somebody in the security industry, like some noted security researcher, would send him a breakdown of what happened with the OPM hack, the Office of Personnel Management, because I'm pretty sure that was self-inflicted. And that, if he's interested in this kind of thing, he really needs to look into what happened there, because the skeletons are skeletons on top of skeletons in that closet.
Well, how about the NSA toolkit? This is like the meme of the guy sticking the stick in the bicycle spoke of his own bicycle.
Yeah. Or in this case, instead of a stick in a bicycle wheel, it's literally nuclear arms just sprinkled throughout the globe with no guards of any kind.
I think that there's also a measure of anti-Trumping here. Because Trump has done the cybersecurity thing, but he's doing it more like, let's go on the attack.
He put Rudy Giuliani in charge of his cybersecurity stuff, and he thought Rudy Giuliani tweeted something, and it was a sentence period and then another sentence. And the second sentence happened to start with the word in. And so Twitter automatically converted that to a link, and he thought somebody hacked his Twitter account.
Wow. It's not as bad as the Japanese guy who doesn't use computers. So,
2 peas in a pod.
and speaking of U.S.-Asian relations,
Oh, taking a turn for the worse.
not good. I think the trade wars might kick it up a notch after this week, or this last week.
We've already used the headline for this, Huawei or the highway. That's a great headline, but this is not that. This is Huawei's CFO is being accused of fraud, and her main defense is a PowerPoint. So Huawei's CFO had flown to Canada, and she was arrested in Canada and is maybe going to be extradited to the United States for Huawei's selling stuff to Iran. Now, officially, it was some other company that sold stuff to Iran, but the other company even used Huawei's logo. So the Chinese government is up in arms, and they're like saying there's going to be severe sanctions and blah blah blah. But the PowerPoint presentation was presented to a Hong Kong bank in like 2011, and it's like, here's how we did an end run around the U.S. restrictions on trading, which I don't think will go over well in the U.S. courts.
She's also the daughter of the main guy at Huawei. So maybe a little personal at this point. China has responded to this very aggressively. Although that's kind of China's MO. Like they'll tell you they're going to kick your ass. They rarely actually will. But they talk a big game. Of course, so does Trump. So it's the back and forth. But they say that she has to be returned immediately.
I'm surprised that they're reacting this way versus, with the... wasn't the sanction thing, like we're going to replace your executive board with an oversight board, and they were not as aggressive in their response to that as they have been this, I think, though.
But that threatened business. This is his daughter.
Oh, okay.
And he's a very powerful man. He's got the ear, I'm sure, of the government. So,
speaking of things going wrong in criminal enterprise...
Well, is it going wrong or is it going right? So we've known for a long time that the law enforcement agencies are all over the Bitcoin blockchain. If you're dealing in illegal stuff in Bitcoin, somebody's eventually going to find out.
They're logging it and doing analytics on it is what we mean.
And because it's forever, then they have all the time in the world. So what did everybody do? Switch to the altcoins? Well, guess what?
DHS is looking into tracking Monero and Zcash transactions. So the DHS has had great success with tracking and analyzing Bitcoin transactions already. They are now looking for similar solutions for tracking privacy coins. They're getting pretty good at it, honestly. Some of the stuff that they've demoed with the Bitcoin blockchain is mind-blowing because they have posts everywhere.
Well, I can't remember which one of these it was, but it had that flaw where it posts like fake transactions to throw you off the scent, but it does it predictably.
Yeah.
So that you can begin, if you post enough transactions, you can filter out the fake ones. So there's a flaw in it. I don't know if they ever forked it and fixed that or whatever, but these things have privacy built in, but against the full budget of DHS, it probably won't stand up. So be warned.
It's an arms race, and the clock is ticking.
But it's hard. I mean, the DHS can, they have an unlimited budget nearly, and they can just keep throwing time and manpower at it. Whereas if you have to fork those coins every time to change it, that's not going to work out.
Well, not just forking to change it, but the blockchain is forever. So the technology might not exist today to solve it, but even if 3 or 4 or 5 years from now the technology comes about, that's going to be a bad day for those criminals.
You got a pro criminal tip. Always check out the statute of limitations on your crime. And then, sort of like, okay, what quantum computing, how many years out are we? All right, if I commit this crime now, when will it be trivial for someone to go back and pick up the trail?
And if you're worried about, like, are they really going to put that much effort into coming after me? Look at the DB Cooper case.
Well, not only that, but they love to seize coins.
Yeah.
Because that's just free money. You can't, it's not like other assets, at least so far. So they'll take those immediately and auction them off. Of course, crypto's going down the toilet. So I hope they've sold off all the seized coins from all the dark web stuff already.
That's probably what's going on with the price of...
You think they're killing it? Well, across the pond in the EU, they have come to an agreement. So when it comes to cloud computing, we saw this with the Microsoft Ireland thing. There are no good rules in place to say that, okay, if I commit a crime in one country, but my data is on the cloud in another country. Can you seize that with a warrant or whatever they do over there? And the answer has been sort of muddy. Well, they've decided to clarify.
Yeah, the EU governments agreed to a tougher stance on e-evidence. So all the EU member states, I guess, agreed on Friday to a draft about rules governing evidence collection. And it's really, I think they're opening Pandora's box and they don't really realize it.
Well, maybe they do realize it. I mean, they're all about just having access to everything. Now, of course, the tech companies are way against this, but the EU doesn't care about them at all.
No. There's no substitute for good old-fashioned police work. I mean, I get that they need some, inter-country cooperation, and I think that there exists some of that. But do we really need to go cross-country for what amount to, like, petty crimes, like vandalism and stuff like that?
Why not if it's easy? If it's you're sitting at a desk running a query, right?
It's a slippery slope because pretty soon you're going to be outlawing encryption.
Listen, government is the what's the name of the river that cut the Grand Canyon? The Snake River, I think.
Yeah.
They're the Snake River of slippery slopes. They want a vertical chasm. That's what they, like full authoritarianism is their goal. So they don't care at all about a slippery slope.
They don't care if it takes 300 generations to get there. Or
Right, boil the frog, but just, constant pressure.
I thought it was the Colorado River.
It might be the Colorado River. Pull back when, it gets too hot, but then just continue forward. Well, and so here in America, we have a long tradition in government. And that is, if you have a really contentious legal bill or something that you want to pass, don't let anybody read it. It's very important that no one reads it. Net neutrality, remember they pulled that.
DMCA.
DMCA, the 9/11 stuff.
Yeah.
Remember the, what's her name? The crazy one from California.
Feinstein.
We have to pass it so that we can find out what's in it, was her quote. It was one of those Homeland Security bills. Well, the Australians have learned our tricks.
This is very bad. This is a dark day for Australia. So a hasty, ZDNet has the headline. It's a hasty PJCIS examination of the encryption bill produces rushed and contemptuous report. The Australian Labor Party agrees to reverse the sensible order of creating legislation and will pass an encryption-busting bill before reviewing its consequences. So we were warning you that this was coming down the pike. It turns out that it came down the pike a little sooner than we expected.
Yeah, and they rushed it through, didn't give anybody time to look at it, and it has 3 major points, and the really bad one is that ultimate side gate.
Yeah.
And so you can file this paperwork, go to an internet provider or whoever has data, and basically force them to let you in.
Not only force them to let you in, force them to alter their system to do whatever it is that law enforcement is after in terms of monitoring.
And that is secret until there's a long appeals process. And they have to go through that appeals process just to tell the public, hey, they're making us do this. So until that point, they're not even allowed to tell you about it.
Now, one of the other provisions of the law is really curious. Australian legal eagles have said that the third provision, so it's basically like you must build backdoor access is like the first provision if it's not already there. The second provision is providing access to whatever it is that you built or whatever pre-existing backdoor thing exists. And then the other one is like cooperation. And the other one is not required, but it also doesn't have the same reporting and oversight as the other two. And some Australian legal eagles have said that one is potentially the most insidious one because they could come back later and say, okay, this is now compulsory. And they're probably not, what has happened historically is they have not added any kind of monitoring or controls or anything like that over the last provision. And the last provision has the potential to be even more invasive than you must build a backdoor into your system that we can use.
So, you ever talk to somebody and they're trying to explain something to you that you know that you're just going to ignore, or you already know, or they're just wrong about it, and you're like, oh, right, yeah, right. That's what China's doing to the U.S.
China announces punishment for intellectual property theft.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we're definitely going to do that. Now let's talk about Huawei.
That is a good way to summarize this article.
So one of the big, obviously, if you are a U.S. or any kind of Western company and you have a great idea in technology, where are you going to have it built? probably somewhere in Asia, and China is going to be one of the cheaper options. But once you send it over there, you're going to see, what's the Alibaba, is that there?
Yeah.
Amazon? You're going to see that same product show up on Alibaba. Exactly the same product without your branding. And the Chinese that's just culturally, that's what they do.
Yeah.
So they've complained about that and the whole trade war thing. And, we're trying to come to some agreement. And Xi claims that he's going to get serious about that.
I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I thought you were going to say that. So, if you ever talk to somebody and it's a conversation like, "Oh, what's that thing in the kitchen that keeps your food cold? A refrigerator?" No, it's like a big box with some doors on it, and it's got like a really cold spot and a not quite as cold spot. A refrigerator? No, it's like that, except instead of a refrigerator, it's the encryption backdoor, because the politicians keep saying it's not an encryption backdoor, but it's this thing that lets us do this stuff that's like a backdoor.
What does that have to do with that story?
Nothing. Nothing at all. Just, I thought that's where you were going with the whole, we'll do that because China.
Well, speaking of China, last week we talked about the Marriott Hotel breach, which was going on since 2014. Pretty amazing breach. A lot of people, a lot of information. They're still not sure exactly how they did it or how much they got. Well, guess who's to blame?
Reuters has this article that says, exclusive clues in Marriott hack implicate China. And so, the Marriott, by the way, if you say that, SPG or Marriott or whatever, and you didn't catch that story last week, your information has been leaked a long, long time ago. Probably it's like a catastrophic leak. It's really bad, but they're blaming China. I looked into this and I'm sure that China was in there, but I think this is a little bit of a smokescreen. Their security was disastrously bad to begin with.
One of the things they pointed out as proof, right, was that a state actor would be in there for the long term. A criminal would just go in and get the credit cards and leave. I don't think that's true at all.
No.
If you're a criminal and because a hotel is a constant flow of credit cards. Every day you're getting new cards. And you're probably not getting repeats because it's travelers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's new people all the time, different people going on vacation. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It would be awesome if you're a criminal and you have a steady stream of cards coming in with names and addresses and all that information.
Well, steady stream of cards. I mean, criminals have literally attacked the supply chain for just like credit card processors, so that credit card scanning machines or whatever that are sent out to retailers are compromised from the start, from the factory, and that's a perfectly normal thing to do in criminal enterprise. That's become popular the last 5 or 10 years. So, yeah, that's not a state actor doing that. That's just criminal enterprise.
Well, it could be both. Now, this story, I thought about taking this out because it is a bit of a fluff piece. There's not much here, but it is an interesting thing to think about, which is to say using, life, some sort of microscopic life forms as weapons or detection or something like that.
The U.S. military is genetically engineering new life forms to detect enemy subs or divers or anything else in the ocean that's not supposed to be there. There's not really a lot of details here, but I'm reminded of that time that in World War II we trained the dolphins to put explosives on the hull of enemy submarines, and that was very effective.
Bad for the dolphins. So the idea here is you could get some sort of, I don't know if it was like algae or plankton or something, and it would react with something that only a submarine exhaled. Like maybe it could be low-level radiation from the nuclear subs, or even the CO2 being pumped out from the crew. And then you monitor those with like little mini subs that, just are stationed in various places communicating back. And you would know when things are moving around in the ocean. Other things that they're working on that are way cooler are adaptive camouflage, which we've seen some people try that. They've got that color-changing thread now.
We've bred a giant squid that we will pilot the submarine into, and then the giant squid will change its skin color depending.
And self-healing armors, which again, pretty cool. But this is also one of those things where it's like, could there maybe be a disastrous side effect if we start just gene splicing and throwing things into the ocean?
Couldn't be any worse than the plastic.
I think it could be way worse. This is how we got Godzilla. Well, moving on to the social phase of things, and I apologize, but it is another week of Facebook and another week of disastrous news for Facebook because we've had a leak of internal documents that are extremely damning.
For God's sakes, don't tune out on the Facebook stories now. It's just getting interesting. My prediction is going to be that Zuckerberg is probably going to go into a homicidal rage if things continue as they are.
He's got to be on edge.
The Verge headline is Facebook knew Android call scraping would be high risk, and the new documents reveal. So, did we talk about how these internal documents came to light? Because that story is amazing. We did last week, didn't we?
I don't remember. It's in both of these stories, but we did talk about what was it like 369 or something, that company?
643 or something.
And it's because of a lawsuit. They did an app that lets you search for people in bikini pics. Oh yeah, we talked about Facebook cutting off the data.
Yeah.
So Facebook cut off their data because they found that was in poor taste, and they sued them. And all of this are leaks from those court documents.
Well, it's even more interesting than that because Zuckerberg has refused inquiries by Parliament in the UK, and so this business person involved in the lawsuit was traveling in the UK, and so all these legal documents that are under seal and normally probably wouldn't be discoverable in the US because it's not really attorney-client privilege because this person wasn't really supposed to have these documents anyway, but it's from a law firm, like it's private, internal, like the most damning stuff you can imagine. And this business person was traveling in Europe, and they happened to have those documents. And because the stated reason from the Europeans is because Zuckerberg had refused the inquiries, they decided to arrest this person and seize or unlock whatever documents they had, or made them turn over documents or whatever.
It was worse than that. They literally threatened him.
Yeah.
It was like, because they have, the same way we have contempt of court, they have some kind of like contempt of parliament thing.
Yeah.
And so they're like, listen, we can do whatever we want. We can lock you up indefinitely. You will give us these documents.
And just like last week, it was like, oh, this stuff looks really bad. But it was a lot of documents. And they've gotten to some even more good stuff. Like they hit the first vein and it's like, there's gold here. Then they kept going and it's like, this is the mother lode.
Yeah. Two really big ones this week. And this is the first one so if you are on Android using Facebook, the app was scraping your call records. Now, we already knew this from the earlier leak.
We knew this from the congressional testimony, but at that point, the Zuckerbot characterized it as just collecting data to help users do stuff. It's like we hadn't even thought about monetizing it, but we see here that was not the case.
And that if they were doing it without permission, that was a total mistake. Well, this proves otherwise. These emails literally say, hey, here's how we can do this. We're going to have to ask the user's permission. And then another engineer was like, we don't actually have to. There's this loophole that we can use. And then somebody responded, was like, option 2.
You guys that work in technology, you know all about option 2.
Yeah,
we're forced into option 2 a lot as well.
Option 2 is rough. Option 2 is where option 1 is, like 2 paragraphs of how you're going to do it. Option 2 is 12 paragraphs. 11 of them are why we shouldn't do this. And you always hear back, option 2. But it only gets worse because more from this leak. Remember we talked about Onavo. Is it Onavo? Is that the name of it? The VPN?
Yeah, the Facebook sponsored VPN.
Let me make sure I don't know. You can just correct us if we're wrong. I think it's called Onavo. Anyway, we told you when that came out. I remember we talked about this. You'd be insane to use it because obviously whatever's going to go across it, it's going to be encrypted to everybody else. But Facebook can see it.
This is the free VPN service that Facebook offered. So remember when we covered it, it's like Facebook came out with this press release. There was this feel-good, lovey-dovey thing. It was like, the internet access, your ISP's monitoring it. Facebook has got you covered. Facebook takes data seriously, data privacy very, very seriously. We're going to give everybody a free VPN. And it was through this third party. Well, turns out Mashable has got the scoop on this.
Yeah. So they were using that VPN data to look at everything you were doing.
Yes.
Apple actually pulled this from their app store because they looked at it and they were like, no, bro, this violates every data privacy policy we have. We know what you're doing here. It's still on the Android store. So those people can use it. And the people who got it before it was taken off the store, it does still function. Well, what they mined out of it is literally the reason they bought WhatsApp and Snapchat. They were looking at what you were doing other than using Facebook. And they were like, oh, I see what we should acquire. And it worked. It worked beautifully.
I wonder if since this is just coming out now, I wonder if this is going to be a GDPR fine.
When did they buy those? It's been
a long time since they bought
right?
them, but the new, it's when you disclose the
and he did lie about it.
and there are people that are still using the VPN service. So if you're in Europe and you're using if you're in Europe and you're using the Facebook VPN service, you might want to, I don't know, who do you contact for a GDPR violation in that case?
Your MIPS. Was it MIPS? MEPS. Member of European Parliament, right?
Somebody in the comments is going to let us know, but that is going to be disaster. That's going to be world ending for Facebook potentially.
Well, but that's got to be the worst of it, right? I mean, these leaked documents, it can't get any worse than this. Well, when asked that question, the Zuck had an interesting answer.
Yeah, the Telegraph says that Facebook fears that more secret documents have been leaked. So they really have no idea what all has been leaked at this point.
Oh, I think they don't have any idea what's leaked. But based on this answer, I think they know it could get way worse.
Yeah.
So it's the worst case scenario is probably several orders of magnitude worse than this.
Yeah.
Based on this answer.
So here's an interesting crossroads, at least for us in the U.S. So Congress asked the Zuck all of these questions about all of the stuff. And, honestly, his answers weren't really that terrible. And most of the people that were asking him questions honestly seem to be barely literate. Do you think that with these revelations coming out showing that he either outright lied or strongly misled, that any consequences will come of that? I mean, I'm sure Ron Wyden and maybe Feinstein, but anybody else?
Well, lying to Congress is a crime, right?
Oh, one would think.
I don't know if that's actually true, but we are in a political situation where lying to an authority or under oath is in the spotlight because you got the whole Mueller-Trump thing going on. And I think it could be because the narrative has to be it's never acceptable to do that. They could totally throw Zuckerberg under the bus just to prove a point.
Yeah, a lot of his answers in the congressional testimony were definitely, that wasn't our intention. We didn't mean to do that. We're going to try to do a better job of this, that, and the other. But these leaks are showing that he is exactly as sociopathic as he appeared to be, trying to monetize all of this data.
And it wasn't just him. I mean, these are other people in these emails. So It's not even just a crazy man at the helm. I mean, it is, but it's not just him. Either everybody is there with him or they're just too afraid to do anything about it.
And Facebook, internally, their people know. They know, and they know what's up.
Yeah. Well, and you're looking at, Facebook as a brand, and you're thinking to yourself, is it time to jump ship? Is this ship sinking? Well, if you are thinking that, you're not vocalizing it. And if you are vocalizing it, you're being very cautious.
The New York Magazine has a really interesting article. Facebook employees are so paranoid they're using burner phones to talk to each other. So there is apparently a lot of unrest at Facebook, and some sources here for this article report that employees, these are pretty high-level employees, are using burner phones to talk about things, and they're like, oh gosh, if that was wrong, then this other thing was wrong, and I don't want to be in a spotlight, I don't want to get in trouble. But also because would you say that there is an air of vindictiveness from the executive committee, which is driving some of this secrecy?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's the anti-leaking, campaigns, and the whole we're failing and it's everybody else's fault seems to be how things are at Facebook. And good Lord, you don't want to be, and they're listening to everything, right? Yeah. You know that everything you do at Facebook, you're probably mandated to have the Anavo VPN on your phone if you work there. So that you have
it's
to be...
It's for your safety.
You know how bad it is, so the precautions you have to take, which I guess that's a vote of confidence for burner phones.
How many times has this scenario showed up in dystopian science fiction where it's like you can't say anything around your smart speaker or because they might be listening? I mean, that's literally happening to these employees.
What you mean, making speech a crime or something that you can be taken down for is a bad thing for societies? Well,
I get the feeling that some of our past presidents, if we're seeing this scenario folding out, would probably send in the National Guard and give refugee status to those employees.
Well, so Facebook, that was big this week, but probably among our audience, the more newsworthy and the more devastating thing to find out was the Tumblr fiasco.
Tumblr is coming to an end December 17th. PSA, don't forget, you need to go get all your stuff.
Well, it's not coming to an end. That's incorrect. Only one part of Tumblr is coming to an end.
The motherboard headline is a quarter of Tumblr's users are there to consume porn, data scientists estimate. And so Tumblr is cracking down not just on porn, but anything even like vaguely, remotely adult content. Like their algorithm for determining if something is adult content or not is not very good. And so it's taking down a lot of stuff.
And this is all fallout from the App Store removal. So they're trying to do anything they can to get back into Apple's good graces. And they took a very heavy-handed step of saying no adult content whatsoever. Now, this, some researchers looked into this. I think they were already doing this before that happened. And they were just studying Tumblr. And they discovered that as much as a quarter of Tumblr users are just there for the porn. Here's the amazing part. That's not surprising, right? It's the internet. Of course, a quarter of people there for the porn, probably a low number. But here's the crazy part. 71% female.
Wow.
Women look at porn on Tumblr.
Nice.
Which, maybe it's like Planet Fitness. It's like a place you can go to enjoy porn without all the judging and the masculinity. What a terrible thing to take that away from them. But they've also estimated that, 25%, if 25% of your user base goes away, that's a difficult blow, which maybe is what you were talking about. It might be the end of them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking is that, once they do this, it's just going to... Tumblr had such a good thing going for a while, but they could have made this change slowly over time and carefully, but the Apple thing has really sent them into a frenzy. But how crazy is it that Apple can effectively dictate stuff on your platform? Because I get the feeling that they made a lot of revenue through their iOS installations.
Well, the Tumblr hipsters, those are Apple people.
Yeah.
Especially in the 71% women.
I wish those hipsters would get clued into like real technology.
Yeah. You want their weird furry porn on your stuff?
No, they would not be welcome at the Level 1 forum.
Well, we gotta give them a place, man. That's the thing about it. You keep cutting out all the fringes and you don't give them any place to be, and weird stuff starts happening.
It's kind of like the YouTube algorithm. It's like, oh, this is what everybody enjoys on average. No one will enjoy that.
Yeah, you got to give people a place, and it doesn't make any sense for Apple to ban porn. Although I think there was like a child pornography thing going on there too, which is really weird.
Yeah,
but and I understand that. You got to try to do something about that. But yeah, it is. Probably, and I wonder, do you think somebody is going to try and capture the Tumblr porn audience somehow?
Pornhub?
They would like to, but again, I think it's sort of an eclectic mix of pornography, not your traditional stuff.
I don't know. They've put a lot of like the defense distributed stuff up, even stuff that YouTube doesn't want to carry anymore.
I guess maybe that's any entrepreneurs out there.
Didn't Larry Flint do a bunch of that too? Like Larry Flint did a bunch of First Amendment stuff other than porn.
He got real political after he got shot, yeah. But I don't think anybody took it seriously.
That's it for today's episode.
Tomorrow we got a big block of business. It was just a massive amount of business news this week.
There's so much, business and technology, because we really roll business into technology these days.
Well, listen, if it's technological, it's for sale. Yeah. Unless it's government, and then it goes in here.
Or unless it's vaporware, as we cover sometimes.
So yeah, big giant block of that. We might sneak science in there just for flavor. See you then.
It's 12/12/18. Didn't piss off the Euros because it's 12/12. No matter which way you prefer the day and the month.
Their opinion doesn't matter.
Sorry, Euros.
But we are closing in on the midpoint of December. Those of you who are Christmas-oriented, pro Aspie tip, now's the time to order things.
Because otherwise it's probably not going to get there.
Because I know you're not going to go to a store, right?
Yeah.
Man, I've been going to the store a lot recently because of the new house. and it is just infuriating. I can't stand those crowds. It's insane. I still don't understand where those people are the other 11 months of the year.
The really frustrating thing is that you go to the store and most of the stuff the store has is crap, and you can get better stuff online. And it's like, why is it always that there's better stuff online than there is in the store?
Well, I'm buying stuff like shower curtains and things like that. And it's just like, you don't think of it. I never realized I needed all that crap until I'm like, oh, wait, I don't have this thing at this house yet. Better go get it. So
ThinkGeek sells shower curtains. As does Amazon.
Those are hideously overpriced. You insane? Actually, I got to remember to take my sheets are downstairs. I got to get those. So maybe, I don't know if the biggest news this week, but the big hardware news is the AMD leak. But I'm going to tell you, these prices, no way. No way these are the prices.
It's insane. So Forbes has the article. I think Adored TV on YouTube was the original source of information. There's a credible leak out there, and Jim did some pretty good analysis and that kind of thing on if it's true. But the Forbes headline is huge leaks reveal AMD's Ryzen 3000 series up to 16 cores and 5.1 gigahertz frequencies. This generation of CPUs from AMD would seem to fully embrace the whole like chiplet microarchitecture, meaning some of the chip is fabricated on 7 nanometer for the things that 7 nanometer does best. And some of the things on the chip are fabricated using older processes, things like memory I/O and Infinity Fabric I/O and peripheral I/O, that sort of thing, on an older process. So if you look at the prices here, we're going to see 8 cores on AM4 and just all sorts of crazy, crazy stuff. I'm optimistic, but let's not forget how optimistic everybody was with the whole, Vega thing.
Well, speaking of Vega, even more unrealistic are the leaked video cards. Because we're talking about a $250 GPU that's going to be on par with the 1080 GTX.
Yeah.
That's no.
It does seem unlikely, but I would say that it depends on when it's going to come out. So if AMD is targeting $250 for the 2070 after the 2070 has already been on the market for a year, around $300 is not completely insane.
Well, it also depends on, I think, how much of that inventory NVIDIA gets through.
Yeah.
Because until they get through that, of course, if this does come out and it really is these prices, that is such bad news. How puckered do you think the anuses at NVIDIA are this week?
I don't think that they've got such market share that I don't think that they're really even that worried about it.
I don't know. I mean, I think this could definitely push somebody to AMD. I mean, 250.
Yeah. I mean, for 2070 levels of performance, I mean, that is pretty nuts. And it remains to be seen what they're going to do with the whole ray tracing thing. But the ray tracing thing is honestly not as revolutionary as it was when like the Voodoo 2 came onto the market or remember like going from like a regular graphics card to the Voodoo, and it was like, wow, I'm willing to pay a premium for this. Yeah, good Lord.
That was Quake, and it was just like, what's going on here? But ray tracing, I don't think there's been a killer game.
No.
The killer app for ray tracing.
Battlefield?
Doesn't exist yet. Yeah. And people,
Snicker.
well, like those kind of FPS type situations, people are going to turn that off if they're serious about the game.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that's going to be a selling point. So if AMD, even if they're not doing ray tracing on the level of the RTX stuff, for $250,
yeah, that's a good deal.
People are going to take it. It's too good to be true. Wait and see.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that may be too good to be true, how about the Intel's lithography? Now, they claim that 7 nanometer, okay, 10 nanometer is a disaster, right? It is a dumpster fire. But 7 nanometer is apparently a beautiful sports car sitting next to the dumpster that's perfectly fine.
So Anantech has the article here. The Intel EUV-enabled 7 nanometer process tech is on track. And so this article details some of the differences between Intel's 10 nanometer process and Intel's 7 nanometer process. And one of the differences is the wavelength of light used for the process. And there's a whole bunch of other technical details. They say that the 10 nanometer process is actually going to be simpler for a lot of reasons than the 10 nanometer process. So the 7 nanometer process is going to be simpler from a manufacturing standpoint than the 10 nanometer process. And I no longer trust Intel because they have said some very misleading things about the 10 nanometer process and like where exactly it is in the pipeline. And so here they show up and they say, look, the people working on 7 nanometer, it was a completely different team. They were working out of a completely different building. And yeah, those 10 nanometer bozos were just, I mean, they stopped short of literally saying that, the 10 nanometer people, were just going to throw them directly under the bus and tell the bus driver to step on the gas. But the 7 nanometer people are our heroes. But then it sort of go on to say, well, 7 nanometer is probably not going to be out for about 4 years.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. It's on track, quote unquote, but the track has a long way to go. So, I mean, if you're, what are the odds that most of the people in the upper brass will just be gone in 4 years? It's easy. It's like being a politician. You can promise stuff now and let it be the next person's problem. Well, we've talked a lot about Comcast and their hidden fees. We talked about their hidden fees last week. We talked about many of the cable companies just straight up lying to you in their advertisements. $19.99 is not $19.99 ever when it comes to internet and cable service. AT&T traditionally has maybe been a little bit better, but things might be changing.
Gizmodo has the headline, AT&T will now keep your money if you cancel TV or internet in the middle of a billing cycle. So if it used to be the case that if you set up your service to cancel on the 15th of the month, you would only be billed for 15 days of service. They call that prorating. And I did a little bit of research. I tried to find it. I think this stems from some court cases in the 60s because AT&T was doing a lot of stuff like this. And some of these practices led to the breakup in the 80s, the monopoly breakup, in which they promised not to do things like that or to have prorating. And I tried to find the details about if this is by law or if this is something they agreed to. And I think it was just something they agreed to do to try to keep the regulators off their back, that now they're just saying, it's been long enough.
Now, that article says it's actually going to, it's not just middle, it's day 2.
Yeah.
If you cancel day 2, that's you. Now, of course, you keep the service. So you get to continue using your service for that month, but you will never get money back. And if you're canceling, you're usually canceling because you're moving or you don't have the equipment anymore or something like that. So what good is the service?
Well, it's inconvenient though, because if you are moving over the course of a month, it's like I'm starting the move on the 1st, but I will be sleeping at the new place after the 15th. You could schedule it perfectly and to save a little money. I mean, $200, $300 for the communications bill is not atypical for an American per month. And so going from, $200 to $400, $300 to $600 for the overlapping service, that's a lot that most people can't afford.
Now you can switch your service if you were going to keep it. You can also transition that money to another AT&T service, but you just can't get it back for any reason.
Yeah, or switch providers or something like that.
Well, Apple, we haven't talked about an Apple failure for a little while, have we?
We talked about the butterfly switch failure.
That's been a couple months ago, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So we're definitely due for one, and here we go. And this really isn't new news. This is just a new lawsuit.
9to5Mac has the headline, Class Action Suit Alleges iMac and MacBook lack dust filters causing display and performance problems. So I think that the peasant class is starting to realize that maybe the emperor is naked.
Yeah. I also wonder, though, is this a really widespread problem, or is this somebody who's belt sanding next to their...
No, it's definitely a really widespread problem. But the new iMacs that have a built-in Vega graphics card, Louis Rossmann has some teardown. I think it's Louis Rossmann has some teardown videos on those, and those are just from daily use. They accumulate dust like crazy in a normal household.
I think this is specifically about the monitors, where the dust will literally get into the display.
And yeah, there's nothing you can do.
And yeah, it's just it's not a dead pixel. It's just your dead flesh.
Yeah,
that's blocking.
Now, it used to be on the old 27-inch iMacs. They actually had a little layer of rubber around the screen, and the glass was held on magnetically. So if you wanted to, you could just pop the glass off and clean it and put it back, and it wasn't really a big deal.
That sounds like the antithesis of an Apple design. You mean it wasn't super glued or welded? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. If you're one of these people, they are seeking more participants for the class action suit. So
if you've had butterfly switch failures, I mean, that was just kind of the last straw, because you get the I know somebody that has a MacBook Pro that's barely a year old, and whenever they start doing any kind of light duty, it sounds like there's a Dremel tool going off because it's that zzz, it's just really struggling, and it's because he has cats.
You got to think that most hipsters have cats. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a cat lover. Maybe I'll get some cats, but you recognize that Apple people probably have a lot of cats. You would think in the engineering room, they would just have a shelter, just to see how that works out for them. Well, we talked about Facebook and how clandestine you have to be to communicate within Facebook so the Big Brother doesn't hear what you're up to. And it seems like among the big tech companies, that's not unique.
Business Insider has this, like, FU leakers, a former senior Google employee says a frantic quest to stop internal info getting out is now management's #1 priority. This is, of course, fallout from the Chinese search engine Dragonfly. The fallout here is that people in Google were working on this, and they want to work on this. They want to work with the Chinese government for business interests or new markets or whatever. But a lot of the employees at Google have a problem with that ethically. And so they want to make sure that the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing so that they can take on those projects without really anybody knowing what's going on or being able to answer an inquest or being arrested in another country full of documents that they maybe shouldn't have had that then turn out to be really embarrassing. Talking about Facebook now.
Yeah, and the Dragonfly thing, we learned last week that the data privacy guy was not invited to Dragonfly meetings.
After raising some objections.
Because they knew that, he might do something crazy. So I was like, just exclude him. And it seems like not only are they doing that, but they're sort of terrorizing the workforce.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, if you leak, we will come after you. The article describes them as being sort of consumed by it. Like it's the #1 priority of all these executives. It's like, forget innovating and all that other stuff. We must destroy the leakers, which is kind of like a kind of a Moby Dick type situation.
Yeah.
And the other bad news for Google is their shadow workforce. Now, we've talked about this in the past. Places like Amazon with their delivery and their warehousing. A lot of companies do this with IT.
Yeah.
You don't actually work for Google or Amazon or HP or whoever. You work for some, ridiculously named company who contracts with these people. And you are not a full citizen.
No. CNBC's article is Google's shadow workforce of contractors demands higher wages, equal benefits, and so on in a letter to CEO Sundar Pichai. So these are the contractors at Google. There's a term for them, TVCs, I think. And so those are temporary, contracted, or something else type workers.
The V is just part of the first one. So it's the temp workers and the contractors. That's who it encompasses.
And the situation at Google is that they're not treated anywhere near the way that real Google employees are, but they're doing enough work that they feel like they should be. Yeah. So
probably true. A lot of, like when you talk about the IT people and the delivery people, they're doing the same work. They're just simply not given the same treatment. One of the big things they talk about, they're not allowed to go to the Friday meetings, which is where they've,
the town hall meetings.
The leaks are coming from. So those are probably related. The big thing here, and it's like, okay, I can kind of understand, it's like, listen, guys, you're not Google employees. You didn't make the cut. We're going to throw you some table scraps. Be happy with what you get. But here's one that they can't explain. Remember the YouTube shooter? They didn't tell these guys about her. The regular employees got a notice. It was like, get out of the building, there's a shooter. These guys were just working away. And Google's response was, oh, we told your employer. So
that's a little rough.
That's a little weird. And our next story, this is a little bit of a non-story, but definitely not something that the anti-leakers at Google want to be a headline.
The New York Post has the article, Google employee 22 found dead inside of New York City headquarters. But the headline for us is not the headline, but the fact that this is a headline. I mean, it's unusual for somebody that young to die, and they don't have any kind of history of, according to the thing, they don't have any kind of history of drug abuse or anything like that. They just died. And so it's unusual for somebody to die that young, sure, but just because it happens inside a Google office doesn't mean that it's newsworthy.
Yeah, and the first thing that came to my mind when I saw that headline, that's the reason I included the story before I read it, was like, 100-hour work week and like those Japanese guys who just die playing World of Warcraft. But they didn't there was no mention of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like he was necessarily overworked or worked to death. He just happened to die while he was at the Google office.
And somehow it becomes a story for the New York Post. That doesn't make sense.
Well, it's a catchy. Listen, it got me. It clickbaited me. I was like, oh, let's find out about that. Well, there's nothing to find out about. Wow. And the next story, again, we're talking about Apple. Should have put these together.
Also clickbait.
Well, it's true, but is it surprising?
No.
I mean, I think most people who know about technology are pretty aware of this.
Your Apple products are getting more expensive, and here's how they get away with it from the Washington Post. So it talks about how people that want to frequently replace their devices are getting hit the hardest because the devices are actually getting quite a bit more expensive.
But it also points out that Apple does offer lower cost options. You can get the cheaper stuff. But these Apple hipsters, again, they're not buying into technology. They're buying into the brand and the lifestyle. And the lifestyle has been sold to them as have the best stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So they buy the $1,200 iPhone. And they're happy to do it.
Even though it's only marginally better than the $600 iPhone.
And is rising way above the rate of inflation.
Yeah.
You're getting basically the same stuff. Now, Apple will tell you that you're getting all these great new features, so it merits the price. But then they'll sell you a device that has most of those features for $800 or $600.
Yeah.
But people aren't interested. The R version of the iPhone they talked about, that's actually the newest one. But it's not the best one because it's supposed to be a budget version of the iPhone. No one cares.
Yeah.
No one wants it.
Yeah. That's kind of funny. That means the price is going to come down. No, I don't know. That means that they're not going to hit their manufacturing targets and it's going to be Harry Carey at Foxconn.
Well, speaking of monopolistic juggernauts, let's talk about Steam. But more importantly, a possible competitor to the throne.
Competitor. VentureBeat has the headline, Fortnite dev launches Epic Game Store that takes just 12% of revenue. That's a big deal because on Steam, it's 30%. And this is going to take just 12%. But if your game uses the Unreal Engine 4, I think, the license terms for that on Steam are that they also get 5% of your Steam revenue. But if you go for the Epic Game Store, it's 12%, not 17%.
Yeah, nice. So the other thing is Steam has just recently changed its pricing. And it tiered based on revenue. So if you sell 10 million, you get a better share. And then if you sell 50 million, you get a better share. And if you sell 100 million, you get a huge, they start taking like 5%, I think. And that, of course, is great to bring in the big names to your, because, we see all these people spinning off their own. They got Blizzard and Activision and who else has got one?
Well, the cost is marginal. Yeah.
Ubisoft has got one.
All of these people have them, and they're all terrible. They're all just garbage.
So Steam is trying to get those people back. It's like, hey, if you're huge, we'll give you these special rates. But if you're a poor indie developer, you're always going to be in 30% land. You're going to sell 10 million worth. So maybe an attractive place to go. Yeah. And a lot of people talk about how you would have to hire someone to do a lot of the stuff that Steam does, like rolling out updates, hosting all that infrastructure. You're getting something for your 30%, but now Epic's going to do it for 12%.
I bet that Steam lowers their, if they start to get any traction whatsoever, Epic, then I bet Steam lowers their percentage for indie developers, or they do it where like until your first million, the percentage is very low.
Well, Epic, they quoted in the article, I think they're going to lose money on this, and they're okay with that because they were like, we've wanted to do something like this for a long time. It's just not economically feasible. But now there's Fortnite. So we're kind of drowning in cash, and we're just doing what we want.
The thing that I like about this kind of thing is that Steam is actually not a terrible platform for what it does. They've done a very good job of balancing the rights of the user with the other stuff. And I think that it's going to be a long time before Epic is able to catch up to Valve with something that is as functional and reliable.
Well, a lot of people are blaming Bethesda, saying you knew what a just garbage Fallout 76 was, and you knew if you put it on Steam, you would lose your shirts to refunds, and that's why you didn't go to Steam.
That's probably true.
And it does point out that Steam kind of goes to bat for the user a little bit, which is nice. Well, if you're in a place where it's convenient, you could walk outside right now and you could look up in the sky, and you won't see an army of drones, which is incorrect according to Jeff Bezos 5 years ago.
Where are the drones? Amazon's customers are still waiting. So this is from the Associated Press, and these guys are like, wait a minute, didn't Jeff Bezos promise us automated delivery drones? Where are our automated delivery drones? And you got to wonder what sort of trauma these guys have been through that they're demanding this.
He did, in fact, say 5 years ago that he thought within 5 years, delivery drones would be totally a thing. Everybody would be enjoying them. And we do not have them. Now, we have had some deliveries by drone, but
a few human organs, as we learned last week.
Yeah, most people don't have access to it. I think in Japan they use them a lot, but they don't have the kind like the airspace rules. I don't think as much. So maybe some vaporware. I don't know. I think we'll probably get them. I wonder if self-driving cars will further push drones out, because that'll make that industry cheaper and more automated.
Probably. I could see like pizza delivery happening more readily by a self-driving car with a bunch of pizza slots versus drone.
Well, what we probably won't see very much more in the future are gasoline engines, which is tragic. I didn't include the story. I did see Volkswagen. They've planned as far as 2026, as far as gasoline-driven, diesel-driven cars. After that generation, they're not going to do fossil fuel.
Yeah, I saw that. I also saw that Elon Musk tweeted that he's maybe interested in taking over those production factories that GM shut down.
Yeah. So
I wonder if he's just toying with them.
Well, then the Musk tweets are, who knows? Yeah, you take those with a grain of salt. But in a lot of places in the EU, the filthy socialists have decreed you just can't drive gasoline engines in our beautiful cities. So what do? Well, Aston Martin has an interesting answer.
Aston Martin is the luxury car maker. So the Verge headline is that they will make old cars electric so they don't get banned from cities. So your classic car that it would be a crime to do anything that dramatic to. It's like, oh, we're going to sell an electric conversion kit so you can still drive this thing around.
That one is a 76 something or other. And definitely the people who have those are classic. Now, they do say it's going to be what they describe as a cassette, which is sort of like you're just going to pop it in and replace the engine. And if you ever want to, you can go back. I don't understand how that's going to work with like a throttle, though. Because these old cars, the throttle was literally, controlling the fuel. So you'd have to put some sort of sensor in there. And
drain the gas tank, because you don't want to haul all that gas around for no reason.
Yeah, well, you could just run that out. That wouldn't be too bad. But it seems like it would be labor intensive.
Yeah, to switch it. But
reversible, so.
Well, I guess if you're paying for an Aston Martin, $100,000 to swap it between modes is not really a big deal.
They did mention that. It's like, these people got a few dollars. But that's got to hurt the classic car trading market, right?
One would think, yeah.
Can't be good for it. Well, another issue that we have, that we will have with self-driving cars, especially if everybody has one and they're low cost, is just because the cars are driving themselves doesn't mean there's less traffic.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a city, something big happens and you have to change the traffic, and it can get really bad for a really long time, which is what they're dealing with in Seattle. UPS has the answer.
They're getting ready to open a tunnel, so UPS is worried. But the headline is UPS tries delivery tricycles as Seattle's traffic doom looms. Now, the Seattle's traffic doom is from, they're closing one road to open another road, but for a while, there's not going to be an easy route downtown or something like that. So UPS has these tricycles, but they are electric assist. So,
yeah, so
you can pedal, but there's batteries.
Well, you operate this wheel, and I think these These back ones here, you have a lever, so you can apply, I think like a 12 mile per hour assist on those, and of course that'll be filled with packages.
350 pounds worth.
The range is not great. It's like 4 to 12 miles or something like that. So obviously in the city, I guess it wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, got your little rain guard. Could get cold in Seattle.
Yeah.
I think they're going to make that change in later December or January or something, right? So
Those guys will not be wearing shorts.
even if you're not wearing shorts, that's going to be a cold little. And it seems like they went sort of like minimalist with the shield. Because what if you're behind a truck and it's throwing like slush and salt back at you?
Yeah, don't think those will be good in the snow.
Guess we'll find out.
Poor UPS
You know
guys.
it's going to snow in Seattle, right? I mean,
Yeah,
how could
it's
it
got
not?
to. How could it not?
Well, we talked about Amazon Go, the store where you just walk in and pick up whatever you want and walk out, and it gets charged to your Amazon account. I'm excited about that. We'll never see one in this part of the world, but maybe those of us in rural places can still enjoy them when we travel.
Reuters headline is exclusive. Amazon targets airports for a checkout-free store expansion. So these are the cashierless stores. What better place to put them than an airport? There's people there 24/7. They're looking for stuff. It's like, hey, you got an Amazon account? Come right in, take whatever.
Yeah. And if you can pay Amazon prices from the website instead of those ridiculous airport prices, these will be huge.
Yeah.
So look forward to that as you travel. They have sort of talked about Amazon really wants to do this, but apparently it's kind of rough getting real estate inside an airport. There's like a bidding process or something.
Yeah.
And every time they bid, the airports come back and it's like, oh, we got somebody that beat your bid, but they won't tell them who. So it's like, are you just screwing with us? Don't screw with the Bezos.
I think that probably also means that there's not going to be like 50-cent bottles of water in there. Like you can get on Amazon.com. It's going to be the same old $5.
Well, you can't buy an individual bottle of water on Amazon. So you might be able to get a gallon jug.
Can't get that past security.
Well, we talked about Uber. We haven't talked about Uber a lot lately. The new guy that took over has done a good job of sort of calming things down. But before that happened, we talked about arbitration. If you are unhappy with Uber, just by merit of signing up to the service, and that terms of service that you didn't read, you agreed to arbitration. So you can't sue them. But one law firm has found an interesting loophole.
Yeah, so this story is actually really interesting. It's another Reuters article, and it says, forced into arbitration, 12,500 drivers claim Uber won't pay fees to launch their cases. So we covered this originally when it was happening, and the court said, okay, you've got the arbitration agreement, and in the arguments to that court at that time, a long time ago, Uber said, yes, we're going to pay the arbitration firm the fees, which is like $1,500 to start, and that will kick off the arbitration process. Uber has done that 6 times. They've gone to arbitration 6 times so far out of 12,500.
Yeah, so it costs $1,200 to do. So the law firm basically was like, hey, we want to do 9 test cases to set some standards, and we want you to work with us. And Uber was like, no, we're going to do what we want. And they're like, okay, have 12,000 cases that are $1,200 a piece, and you have to deal with right now. And their answer was, we're just not going to deal with it. So there is a time limit that I think they've already missed. I don't know what happens there.
Well, they may be able to go back. The law firm that originally argued in court and where the court said, okay, I guess there's an arbitration policy in place, you can go with arbitration, they may be able to get that ruling overturned because judges don't look kindly on that. If you tell a judge, hey, we've got an arbitration process, we're going to follow through with it 100%, and then this happens, if you get the same judge, that judge is going to be pissed off.
And there's probably no limit of Uber drivers who are upset, who would be willing to just jump in there. So they could cover that amount of money, you know, even 12,000 cases at $1,200 a pop. Yeah, Uber could eat that cost. But if it's constant, that'll destroy them. So yeah, they got to do something here.
Bad news for Uber.
But smart in terms of that law firm.
You know what else is smart? The Level 1 store, because I keep forgetting that we got new stuff in there, and we forgot to mention it at the start.
There's some fine looking water bottles. Or let's say that you have to visit your family for the holidays, right? And you don't particularly enjoy that. Maybe some holiday spirits. That is, what are these, like 16, 17 ounces?
Yeah, they're pretty big.
That is a lot of rye whiskey to get you through.
Vacuum insulated, so it'll hold the heat and the cold.
I don't think
they don't care.
Those drinks don't necessarily need to be chilled.
Well, you might also need some spirits if you're holding Bitcoin as well.
Yeah. I didn't check the price before we started, but
it was hovering just over 3,000.
It's really just plummeting.
Bitcoin falls 10% as bad news descends like cockroaches coming out of a hole, according to MarketWatch.
And of course, they're talking about Ether. Most of the coins are just crumbling. And the Bitcoin Cash thing they blamed, I don't think that's it.
No,
I think this is just, panic selling.
If it was Bitcoin Cash would be going up, and then Bitcoin would be going down. But everything is going down. Yeah. There's lower trading volume. There's lower everything across the board. It's probably not just one thing. It's probably a combination of things.
Well, I think the euphoria is officially dead.
Yeah.
And probably we're falling below that line. Like there's probably like a $4,000, $5,000 area where it could be stable, except now the sentiment is so bad.
Yeah. It was stable at 6, and
now,
so 5 doesn't seem unreasonable.
Some people are saying that this is the end. It's going to go to 0. I don't see it going to 0.
No.
But a lot of people, when they were caught up in the tulip mania that was Bitcoin, made some really, really bad decisions. And one of those individuals is about to suffer for that.
The Bitcoin, this is the Bloomberg article, Bitcoin options bought for $1 million will soon be worthless. So this was somebody who bought options on Bitcoin if Bitcoin was going to go past 50,000 or something like that.
$50,000 call for December 28th. So on December 28th, if Bitcoin doesn't happen to get to $50,000, Boiler Snake, he sold early. He sold at like 18,000. He loves to rub our faces into it, let me tell you. Every day you walk in here, he's like, how's that Bitcoin investment going? And it's insulting, but what can we do? Yeah. But yeah, this guy, if it doesn't hit $50,000, then that entire $1 million will be gone.
Yeah. Oops. Although one of the guys that was interviewed for this article said that they were holding Bitcoin and they sold some of the Bitcoin they were holding and then bought this as to like hedge their bets. So if it went down a whole bunch, they're covered. And if it went up a whole bunch, they're covered. And so total, the net on that transaction was still profitable for that individual.
But it could have been profitable plus $1 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this was a lottery ticket. If Bitcoin would have went to $50,000, the amount of options he would have been able to buy at a call that far outside, he would be filthy rich. So at least it didn't get burned completely. Whoever sold those contracts is so happy. They're like, oh, look at this idiot. Well, it was a week of record-setting YouTube viewing, and
not on our channel.
Sadly. What would we? I mean, can you imagine if we got to 264 million?
There would views? Be the comments would be so toxic as to be unmanageable. But Variety is talking about the Avengers Endgame trailer smashes a 24-hour video views record. So this is the trailer for the new Avengers movie. The Avengers Endgame is the name of the movie. It's a movie trailer, 200 and some million views.
60 something.
In 24 hours.
I haven't watched it. Did you watch it?
I did.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. But I think we all kind of know how that story's going to end, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's only one way it can go.
Pretty much.
But those movies aren't terrible. I can't really hate on those. They're predictable, but they're fun.
When we look at the, David Banner, Lou Ferrigno Hulk series of the 70s and like the old Batman series, while they have a certain charm, these are actually pretty well done for the most part.
Yeah. Superhero stuff is done well when they spend a lot of money on it and take it seriously. I think actually one of the drawbacks to these movies is the comedy they try to mix in.
Yeah,
because it's not that great. Although that the Australian rock monster guy was pretty funny, but for the most part, the comedy isn't great. I get they're trying to appeal to children.
Yeah.
But when they take it less seriously, I think it detracts from it a little bit.
I think there's also not as much time for character development in the movies. I find that if I were relying strictly on knowledge of the characters from the movie, I would probably find them a lot more hollow and vapid than they otherwise are.
You got how many superheroes?
Yeah.
There's just too many of them.
There's just not enough time.
So, I don't know. But I'm sure it'll be a big hit. It'll sell quite a few movie tickets. I won't be one of them. Can you imagine? When does that come out?
Sometime in 2019.
So it's not a Christmas movie then?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well. So speaking of YouTube views and our lack of them, at least we're not losing to a 7-year-old. Oh, wait.
YouTube's top earner is a 7-year-old who made $22 million playing with toys. So this is Ryan's Toys Review. There you go.
There he is. Apparently, he just gets toys and puts them together and checks them out, and people love it. Here he is in a giant inflatable water park thing. I mean, that's a charmed life.
It is fun to watch a kid enjoy stuff, but I worry that when he grows up, he's never going to be able to achieve that level of happiness.
Dude, there is so much methamphetamine in that future. Do you think the parents are properly taking care of his money?
I hope so.
Those stories are so dark.
Yeah.
When you make $1 billion as a kid, and then they blow it all on something crazy, and you're famous but broke.
Didn't that happen with Macaulay Culkin?
Something like that did. I mean, he pulled the nose up because he still was in acting and stuff, but he should probably be worth a lot more. But hey, I disagree. I can't stand to watch children do things, but apparently I'm in the minority here because
there is something. I mean, I get it. There's something wondrous about watching a child like be genuinely happy, but also not making a lot of noise.
Well, I think some of it is also because it's not just views. This was income, not views. He's not the top viewed person on YouTube. But those toy companies are probably lining up to pay. It's like, get me on that channel. Let me send you everything I have, the whole toy lineup, and a duffel bag full of money. Please take this from me.
Well, I think one of Linus's best ever performing videos was him unboxing a toy fire truck, just because it was completely motorized and had like a motorized ladder or something. It was like the fanciest toy fire truck ever, and for whatever reason, that was in the tens of millions of hits.
Well, look at PewDiePie. If you can appeal to children, then that's sort of the YouTube secret. Something we don't do at all.
We're going to get them as they become angsty teenagers.
So we're going to get them as they transition from their parents paying for everything to them being penniless.
And us giving them a dose of how it is in the real world.
And no advertisers being at all interested in them. Oh, that's great. Well, I don't know. Maybe some of you have managed to get past that phase and, you're looking at buying a major appliance. You might want to take a second look before you buy that hot new refrigerator. I
don't think we've ever recommended. I think every time anything like this has come up, we've always said, don't buy the smart appliance.
This is ridiculous.
This family says that this smart refrigerator can't be repaired yet because it's too high tech. Now, the article implied that it was because it's got the fancy screen on it and whatever. But when you read between the details, it's because this fridge uses some kind of new refrigerant that nobody has any idea how to work on.
Now, this kind of happened to my parents. They don't have anything that fancy. They just bought a Samsung refrigerator. And because they live in the hills of eastern Kentucky, there are no qualified Samsung repairmen around there, So it broke, and they called whoever they bought it from, Lowe's or whatever, and they're like, oh, you got to call Samsung. So they called Samsung, and Samsung was like, yeah, there's nobody. We can't fix it. So we have to replace it. We'll call you back in 3 months. So
we're going to put it on a boat. You're going to have to pick it up at your local loading dock. And it's this is a landlocked state.
Luckily, Lowe's did give them a loaner fridge, like a crappy fridge. And eventually they got it worked out. But like these people, it took forever to get the replacement.
Lesson learned, don't buy a Samsung fridge. In fact, don't buy something that you either can't work on yourself or is not, overly complicated.
Well, I think modern refrigerators, that's a very small list. But don't get the soup like the top of the line.
Yeah.
Get the most mass-produced model.
Yeah. Because if they had a high failure rate on fridges that a lot of people bought, they would be out of business from having to repair them.
Well, not only that, but people who are around you are going to be able to work on them.
Yeah.
Or you could just call a repair shop and be like, hey, what would it cost to get this model fixed, even if you don't have it yet? And if they say we can't work on that, keep looking.
Yeah. And if you want to make up the problem, just tell them that it's low on refrigerant.
So, China. We've talked about their crushing of the human spirit, and their spying, and the Huawei and all of their political troubles. But here's a good story about China. Some feel-good Chinese moments.
The New York Times is like, China is going to launch this to the far side of the moon, literally the dark side of the moon. That's like in that one album.
Who recorded that album?
Pink Floyd.
Oh, that one was pretty easy, though. So, yeah.
I almost said Leonard Skinner, but I knew that wasn't right.
No, that's very different bands.
Yeah.
From different parts of the world, even.
Yeah.
So, they're going to launch it's going to be, I think, a third or 2/3 the size of Curiosity.
Yeah.
Their rover.
It's going to drive it around.
And it's going to do some measurements. It's got like radar and stuff. That's not super interesting. One of the cool things it's going to do, it's going to try to germinate potatoes and hatch some sort of insect eggs. Just to see if that can happen up there.
Neat.
So.
Well, they'll have to give it an artificial atmosphere, but that should be fine.
No, I think that it'll have an atmosphere, but the thing they're thinking about is in that gravity, can that happen?
Mm-hmm.
So
Neat.
Seems like a potato could pop out of taproot in zero gravity, right?
I would think so.
Why not?
But it's not zero gravity; it's just low gravity.
Well, functionally. So yeah, good luck with the dark side of the moon, which isn't actually dark all the time. Yeah. If you're wondering how you can germinate potatoes in darkness, it's not always dark. It's totally locked.
In before correction.
Well, this is some good news, maybe a little terrifying, because this is going to be a way that I think insurance companies are going to demand this.
Yeah.
And it's going to be dark.
No coverage.
Dystopian.
Scientists develop a 10-minute universal cancer test. It looks for markers in your blood, but it's really accurate, apparently.
Yeah, so apparently the cancer, even if it passes through blood, leaves behind something that will or won't bond to a type of metal or something like that. So what they do is they just pull some blood and they run it through this, and if anything sticks to it or don't, I can't remember which one it was. Do you remember which one it was? Then they know. Somewhere in your body, and that doesn't tell them where it is, but it tells them that somewhere in there are malignant cells, and they're leaving behind this slimy trail.
How bad is that going to be? It's like you go to the little pharmacy at Kroger, and it's like, oh yeah, let's just get you some cough pills, and oh yeah, let's do a saliva test or a blood test here real quick. Oh, you have cancer. It's going to take a couple of weeks for us to schedule to figure out where the cancer is and how bad it is.
Yeah,
that'd be a terrifying couple of weeks.
Or, it's going to be like, hey, you signed up for insurance. Here's one of those little, diabetic testing finger punch things. So, send us a swab back.
If that ever turns blue, you don't have insurance anymore.
So, but that is good, early detection and all that. So, if you can afford it. Of course, this is where we get all those comments about, socialized medicine. Well, Friday... It's going to be a big Friday because we have not done security, we've not done robots, and we've not done nonsense.
Wow, that's going to be a bumper crop Friday.
Hacked Friday.
We've already been dragging on.
I think we might have to cut some nonsense stories.
It's fine. We'll see you Friday. It's December 14th. I can't use the numerical days anymore because they're not the same.
The halfway point. Another pro Aspie tip. Order Christmas presents. That's going to happen very soon.
Sooner than you realize.
You don't want to get hit with those overnight charges for shipping. And remember that you should purchase. Now, listen, I'm not saying it makes any sense. I'm not saying that it's not a ridiculous corporate holiday, but just socially, you should do it. You should get your family some gifts. Just give into it. Unless you're, in some non-Christian country, and then
we did a video on this, as a matter of fact.
I don't think it's out yet. It might be by the time the news is.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be out yesterday. So,
Bethesda. We've talked about the failures of Fallout 76.
not to the extent that I feel it's been adequately covered, but they're far and wide.
Now, some people fed the dragon and even did it under the guise of like, oh, I'll do it ironically to prove how bad it is.
It's bad, but I still play
it.
Me. A little bit.
So not only was the game a disaster, but then there was the canvas bag debacle. But Bethesda went back into their corner. They were like, okay, we'll give you the stupid bags. But now they've screwed up again.
Did you file a support ticket? Well, some bad news. It was badly coded. So Bethesda's support site leaks Fallout 76 customers' personal info. Their address, emails, and more were recovered from this database leak. And they're like, oops, our bad.
And I think you had to support a ticket to get your bag, right?
Yeah.
So enjoy that bag.
Enjoy that insult on injury.
And that identity theft that goes along with it. You'll be able to put the few belongings you have left and go out on the homelessness road with your canvas bag after you've been robbed blind. So,
speaking of robbed blind.
Well, I think this is the second week in a row for a new Spectre attack, right? There were like 2 or 3 weeks where the researchers, maybe they took some time off. I don't know, but now they're back at it.
Researchers discover Split Spectre, a new Spectre-like CPU attack. So this is from ZDNet. There's a lot of good details here, but I can sum it up really quickly, really succinctly. The existing mitigations will mitigate this attack, but this attack is exploitable from the web browser, like this style or whatever. This opens it up. So you can have a malicious ad on a web page that exploits this, which is what we predicted would happen. It's like, Spectre, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden somebody's going to figure out how to do it from something that's reachable easily. And so this is it. This is your warning. This is your canary in the coal mine. You've got to get your system patched for speculative execution because it is now exploitable from the web browser.
This is essentially just Spectre V1. It's no different except for easier to get to you.
Yeah.
So if you can go back and read about Spectre V1 if you'll find out what they can do to you. But yeah, and I suspect this is probably not the end of it. They will keep improving the delivery method.
Yeah.
So
until all of a sudden even text ads on Google can infect your system.
And they did test this on both Intel, AMD, and ARM.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't have used both because I listed 3 things, but yeah, all of the above. Well, phones in prison. Now, I was surprised to learn that the number one piece of contraband in prison is not drugs or tobacco or whatever. It's phones. They love sneaking them in, which
seems like it would be easy to figure it out.
Well, there's only so many ways to get a phone into a prison through a strip search. So you can use your imagination. But when they get them, they are very clever about how to use them.
Yeah. Gizmodo has the headline, Prison Inmates Catfished $560,000 out of military service members in sextortion scam, NCIS says. We're not really sure why they were targeting service members, but they would go on dating sites and post profiles on dating sites and then have conversations with people who were in the service and then tell them that they were underage or pose as law enforcement and say, hey, you're talking to this person on a dating site and we think that's underage or whatever, we're going to fine you.
I'm pretty sure some nudes were exchanged.
Yeah.
And they had, obviously, it wasn't the prisoners themselves.
Yeah.
They had some, they probably brought the phones in with some preloaded nudes. And so when I would say they probably attacked people in the service because there's those morality clauses. Not only could you be kicked out, you might be court-martialed for violating something like that. So they have a lot more to lose if this came out. And $560,000 worth people were willing to pay.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of people caught up in this, I think, because it was extensive. And it's amazing that so many members of the armed services were willing to sort of go along with the scam.
Oh, come on.
I mean, kind of.
See, I'm going to piss people off with this. But there's this sort of mystique about the armed forces. It's like, oh, the best and the bravest and the strongest. No, I'm sure there's plenty of people in there who are great. But there's a lot of people who did that as a last resort. You get a lot of chaff with the wheat. So you don't buy into the whole rah-rah, go America stuff.
Not really that. I'm just surprised that as a collective group that would even, that would be a common thing.
You're surprised that 19-year-old aggressive males
when you put it that way,
trolling around on the internet? Yeah, come on. Well, You know what else they might be interested in the military is fitness. And they might have gotten caught in this trap as well.
Threat Post has the headline, iOS fitness apps robbing money from Apple victims. So this app writer figured out a way
You gotta show the screenshot.
to like...
It's pretty...
Because like with Apple Pay, you have to use your fingerprint, but somehow this app has gotten around that, and it made it look like you were using your fingerprint to enroll in this fitness app, but it actually used your fingerprint to authorize a $100, $130 purchase.
I think it goes beyond that. I think they actually build it as your thumbprint or your fingerprint was going to send some sort of metrics back to the fitness app to get your baseline fitness level. So it's like, be sure and hold your finger in place for 10 seconds or whatever it is. But that's the method of approving if you have a credit card on file.
Yeah.
So,
oops,
$120 they charged.
Well, Apple has taken the app down, but it's not clear who's going to get refunds or what's going on with this.
If you have the card on file, it immediately makes the payment. There's no clearing time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if an app is asking you to hold your finger on the fingerprint scanner for a certain amount of time. Now, from this screenshot, it looks like you can see over here that it is charging you because there's a price and everything. But I guess they count on people. But this looks like a double wide shot.
Yeah, they said that the payment screen only pops up for a second, and somehow the app like clicks the button or whatever.
Sneaky. Guess they're going to have to probably patch that out of the iOS, aren't they?
Apple has a bug that's being exploited.
Well, so does Mozilla. And it's an 11-year-old bug. And after they explain it, it seems kind of obvious. It's like, well, yeah, this would be pretty easy to take care of, right?
So malicious sites can embed an iframe that pops up for HTTP auth, which will prevent you from closing the parent window, which could be running malicious code, generating lots of pop-ups.
Now, the other thing about it is this has popped up from an iframe. Well, you mentioned that, but we need to point out the URL that you're on is not the URL that's popping up the login code. So it's sort of a double subterfuge. Yeah. And so you see, you're looking at one URL at the top, and then the other one is asking you to give your credentials, and they could just steal your credentials.
Neat. Or you can't close the web page.
Now, Chrome...
until you kill the Firefox process.
Chrome deals with this because Chrome has the segregated Chrome EXEs.
Well, and not only that, but if you press escape, then you're not going to get the authorization required pop up a bunch of times because Chrome is like, something crazy is going on here. I'm just going to ignore that.
Explorer forces a delay for these kinds of things. So after you cancel it, it doesn't let it immediately pop again.
So you could close the tab or the window or whatever.
Mozilla.
It's immediate.
Whatever you want, bro.
For 11 years.
So I would say, are there any really legitimate websites that are still using that auth pop-up?
No.
Very few.
They're used basically as a stopgap measure. I like that it's so robust, though. You know, a lot of people re-implement login screens, and often there are more bugs in that than just using the built-in HTTP auth mechanism. But that's not in vogue anymore. Everybody's got to have a custom login screen.
Like a website that a company's spending a lot of money on, if you showed them that, they would just vomit right there in the conference room.
But that is the most secure option because you as the application designer don't have to design an authentication system.
Security is not important when something is that ugly.
We need the login form. Did you see the login form with the bear? There was like this login form where you log in and there's like an animated bear and like it's looking at you when you type, and then when you get it wrong, it shakes its head, and then when you get it wrong 3 times, it face palms, and it's like, that looks great. That's not. There's not like versus HTTP. Never mind.
They're probably passing the password in plain text through JavaScript to the bear animation. It's like, oh, this looks great. Yeah. Well, Quora is a website where you can ask questions. I don't know how popular it is. It's got 100 million users, though. You know how we know?
Because there was a leak of all of the users. Quora's data breach has exposed 100 million users' personal info. This is a website that was really popular in India, from what I understand.
Yeah, so...
Not worldwide, but especially in India.
They're doing they're telling us and doing the GDPR stuff, so... They're doing everything right, it seems. They have found the problem, but just a heads up, if you use Quora, probably been leaked. I can't imagine they got too many more than 100 million people. Maybe they do. I don't know. Well, this article, This is a Wired article, and let me tell you, it is long and wordy. And it really comes out to like, hey, there's a fancy new technology, but it kind of doesn't work.
An eye scanning lie detector is forging a dystopian future is the headline. So if you've seen the old Blade Runner movie, it's literally the thing from Blade Runner where Harrison Ford scans your eyes to tell what you're really thinking. And that's how they're detecting lies. They're doing eye scans.
I don't think they have a picture of it.
But it's not super effective yet.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even though it's not super effective, it does seem like, based on the testing environment, it's more effective than the polygraph, which is like 40 to 60% or something like that.
Maybe not even.
But this thing has a lot of the same failures. But here's the thing. Law enforcement and other agencies, especially for hiring their own workers, are using this a lot and treating it like it's the new answer, even though not super accurate.
Yay, dystopian technology.
But yeah, if you get hired to be a cop or I think the feds were using it, didn't they say? And a lot of companies doing hiring will force you to go. So it's not as invasive as a polygraph. You just sit down and there's a camera. But it's doing the same kind of thing.
How long before we have a case in Florida where a police officer has shot a black teenager and it's like, well, the eye scanner thing said that I needed to shoot him, so...
Do you think they'll have mobile versions of it?
Well, yeah, probably.
I guess what if the body camera is talking to Palantir and it's like, oh, that's a liar.
Yeah.
That could be, wow, that would really be dystopian, wouldn't it?
It's coming.
Well, we blamed China for the Marriott thing. We blamed Russia for the election.
With all their fancy bears.
So who are we going to blame for a bad Chrome extension?
North Korea, of course. Cyber-espionage group uses Chrome extension to infect victims. So this was a Google Chrome extension. They were targeting academics. They were trying to figure out what sort of research and that sort of thing these academics were up to.
It was the Auto Font Manager. Now, these sites would link to a PDF that you would presumably want to read as an academic, something in your field. And when you clicked on it, it was like, oh, this has a font you don't have. You need the font manager. Well, it wasn't really a font manager.
Who knew? So we want to know the people that are reading all the academic papers on nuclear stuff so we can identify them and have them go work for our clandestine government organization in North Korea.
Well, while that Chrome extension was in there, it was capturing pretty much everything. So. If you got Auto Font Manager, heads up. And when you click on something and it tells you need a Chrome extension to read a document, don't read the document.
Download it anyway and manage it yourself. It's fine.
So we've actually talked about this before, I think, haven't we?
We have.
On Level 1 News, but apparently I think that was just a security researcher talking about it.
Yep.
Well, thieves in Toronto have caught on, probably read the same article we did, and they said to themselves, oh, I bet I could do that, and they can.
Yeah, auto theft is on the rise in the Toronto area, and a security expert thinks he knows why. So the thieves are boosting the signal from key fobs inside your homes to steal your cars.
Look how suspicious this guy is. I mean, if I was going to do crime, I would try to dress less suspiciously. I guess he is trying to kind of hide himself from the camera or whatever. But this has to do with, you got your smart keys.
Yeah.
Your smart keys.
You have the button in your car. You don't even have an ignition anymore.
And they are always broadcasting. So
when you get them close together, it's fine. But that's radio signals. You can just boost the radio signal.
So what they're doing is they're counting on you, walking in the front door, hanging your keys on a hook, going about your business. And they just walk up to the door with one receiver, which boosts the signal to another receiver, to the person who's about to steal the car, and lets them in, lets them start the car. They take off.
That sounds exciting. How long before we need to carry a foil bag in the Level 1 store? Because
I was just thinking about not a foil bag, but like a nice Faraday basket. With maybe with this kind of outside.
You put your keys in there.
A nice logo. You just have it on your bedside. You can put your phone in there. You can put your keys in there.
Well, I do want to say that if you take the lid off of one of these and just use a nice metal lid. You could put your keys down inside one of these, and it would be very effective at stopping your radio signals from being stolen.
I don't know if that's the best form factor. I think a nice hinged box.
Yeah,
that would be really nice.
Put your keys in there. That would be
and
nice.
if you wanted to go dark, you could put your phone in there. Because some people apparently like, they have like a needy girlfriend or something, or boyfriend. Let's be gender neutral. And they do the location thing on their phone so they know where they are at all times. And it's just like, listen, I got to go dark. I got to have some me time. Put the phone in there.
Or attack helicopter friend, depending on how they identify.
Oh, yeah. Well, whatever you want to date. I'm not going to judge. We talked about the big banking hack, Dark Vishnya. That's not it's a terrible name. And this affected, I can't remember, what country was it? I can't even remember. It wasn't the U.S. It was somewhere else in the world. And they weren't sure how it happened, but now they know.
It was because the banks were attacked through the direct connection to the local network. So they have separate networks, a banking network and like a regular network. But it turns out that you can have workstations in the bank that are connected to both networks. And so that was what was exploited in this case. By attacking the machines that were on both networks, they were able to mount an attack on the otherwise isolated network.
This just says Eastern Europe, so we can't even clarify.
This is also from Kaspersky, so...
But yeah, these guys, they posed as delivery guys or security guys. And their whole goal was just like get to a conference room. And if they got to the conference room, they'd pop a laptop in the ceiling or a USB or something in the conference room computer. And then they would use that to try to get another layer of access. And then they would go from there to put in rootkits, get another layer of access. And it worked. They got a lot of money. So you might want to lock down the conference room.
No unsupervised guests.
Or you know what you could do is like have a policy where at the end of the week, any USB connection that didn't have like a giant yellow tag on it or something just goes in the trash. Of course, then somebody's going to steal it out of the trash. Oh, that's not a good idea. Don't do that. Don't do that.
A network scan. It's like, oh, there's a USB drive in computer 37. It's like, okay, let's go to that computer and eject it.
Yeah. Well, that seems like almost too far of a reach for these banks.
I'm surprised the banks didn't catch an unknown device on the network, because usually that's the thing they monitor for.
Well, I think these conference room computers were treated with less suspicion, because they're not actually managing money.
Who would mount an attack on our infrastructure from the conference room machine? That's crazy. Is it, though?
Well, some of that holiday shopping that we were talking about in the first episode that you hate, you might be doing it at Walmart. But one fun thing that might come up while you're at Walmart, you might get to watch some robots.
Robot janitors are coming to mop floors at a Walmart near you. Walmart's buying 360 of them, apparently.
Was that like 5% of Walmart stores?
Yeah.
We probably won't get one. I don't go to Walmart anyway. Now, the cool thing about these robots is they're autonomous, but you have to teach them. So when you get your robot, someone drives around with a remote, I imagine, and runs through its cleaning area. It's like, okay, robot, here's your cleaning area. And then from that point, it knows what it has to clean. And so it can work around obstacles and stuff, but it learns the area and just does it over and over and over. So
neat.
You know when I'm going to run over a kid. Now this is an interesting article because it solves a problem, but did we need it to solve this problem?
CNET article says the Google Translate learns to reduce gender bias. The function is available in English, French, Italian, Portuguese, Turkish, and Spanish. I would love to see it translate some late 19th century literature and see what happens.
Well, it only goes from English to a gendered language. So they got an example here. Oh, it's a broken image.
No.
CNET. Look at this. What's going on, CNET?
It's broken.
It's screenshot 2018-12/6 at 3:37 p.m. It's gone. Anyway, so it just showed going from English to, I think it was Turkish.
She is a doctor versus he is a doctor.
I'm sorry, the opposite direction. And then they applied both genders in English. So, yeah.
Neat.
Is it, though?
Yeah.
How would you feel if you were assigned that project?
It's like, we're going to do this. Well, I mean, it's
easy.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'll do it. Well, DeepMind. Do you remember DeepMind, the AI, who is crushing human spirit by beating us at all of our favorite games? Well, it's getting better.
DeepMind achieves a holy grail, an AI that can master games like chess and Go without human help. So this is another incremental improvement on the AI that, a lot of people say that Go is way more complicated than chess even because of the number of possible moves, and the way that AlphaGo played Go was unlike other human players, like just in terms of like the starting line and some other things like that. So this AI is able to do this basically unsupervised now. It's kind of it sounds like a really big deal, but it's really just an incremental improvement on what they've been working on for the last 10 years.
Well, the cool thing about this one is they had the Go version, and all they did was change the rule set and the board. And they'd said, okay,
Teach yourself.
Go learn to play chess. And then it beat the other Google chess AI after 24 hours of games.
Yeah. Which was, a zillion games.
Yeah. So the cool thing isn't that it's winning at chess. We already had robots that were winning at chess. It's that no one taught it to play chess. It just worked it out based on a rule set.
Yeah. And played against itself. And like it created versions of itself basically, where it's like this version was not a very good chess player, and so it died. But then the version that was really good had to make a new version. So,
well, there are some Amazon workers who I think are going to be looking at a healthy Christmas bonus after a little bit of a robot mishap.
24 Amazon workers sent to the hospital after a robot accidentally pierces or unleashes bear spray. So this is one of those robots where it was like it helps them get stuff for the packages, and it somehow punctured a can of anti-bear spray, which led to bad things in the warehouse.
Well, it's I think bear spray is capsaicin, right?
Yeah.
And it's not so much that that's going to kill you. It's that they were in a very enclosed environment.
Yeah.
So you can imagine bear spray is a step up from pepper spray.
Yeah.
Because it's a bear. and these people were in a small room and they got gassed hard with the bear spray.
I wonder if Jeff Bezos like flew out for this one. It's like, all right, somebody brief me on what's happening.
I don't know, but one person they said was in critical condition.
Wow.
So, imagine if you had some sort of any kind of like asthma or respiratory condition or something.
Oh yeah, if you breathe mostly capsaicin, that's going to shred your
I
lungs.
think it's probably going to be real bad for you. But I don't think anybody was at risk of dying. They thought everybody was going to get through it. But again, I think they're going to be a settlement.
It's fun that the robots are to blame, but I mean, I wonder if the robot really is to blame, because if there wasn't a robot involved, if it was just like, forklift operator drives over a can of bear spray, I don't think it would have been a headline.
Got to wonder if the can was somehow compromised as well.
Yeah.
Was it a healthy can? Because I think you'd have to have a decent amount of crushing force to break one of those cans, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just like it accidentally pulled the nozzle, because those things have safeties.
Yeah.
It punctured it and delivered all the bear spray at once.
Yeah.
So,
oops. Is that a product safety recall? Maybe Amazon can deflect it to the manufacturer and say, oh, the walls of this can were thinner than they're supposed to be.
Good point.
It's going to be exciting. Speaking of things that are not exciting and actually kind of terrifying, the BBC News has this article, but I will sort of poison the water a little bit by saying that I see what happened. I see why the family would be upset. I don't think this is a big deal.
I think this is phenomenally stupid on the part of the hotel workers. But I don't know if they should be like fired for it, because they were asked to do something.
Yeah.
It's like malicious compliance.
I don't know if it's malicious compliance or a cultural difference. I chalk this up to a cultural difference.
Could be. Okay, so here we go. The headline is not, it's kind of misleading. So TUI refunds holiday for horrifying dead son tribute. These people actually made a point every year on the anniversary of their son's death to have a celebration, which, a remembrance. They weren't celebrating his death, as far as I know. And they had cake and balloons. Well, they like a family friend or a relative who was going with them. She slipped the hotel workers a couple of bucks. And they were like, listen, make it really special. Here's what they came up with.
It's an effigy for their dead son with a cake.
So this is, they went through their clothing because they had their stuff in the room. And they got various clothes and stuffed them with towels to create, and look at his little tears.
We laugh at this because this has got to be a cultural misunderstanding. I don't think it was malicious compliance. I think this is probably just like in Jamaica, making an effigy of someone that has died is like part of the process. It's totally a cultural thing.
I guess. But that's a really weird looking thing. I mean, it doesn't resemble a human all that much.
I got to think that at least some of the people in Jamaica are like, I don't know why people like to come here on vacation, but we're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. And if you guys do this kind of thing in England, we're okay.
But I bet another part, because it is these resorts and stuff, or like fancy hotels, they will fold your towels into little like origami shapes.
Yeah.
And people love that. And they're probably like, oh, you know what these American tourists, I don't know if they're American, they were Western. You know what these tourists love? Origami towel things. Let's do one that's really elaborate. So,
and it ended very badly.
But they got a free vacation out of it, so I'm not sure that's going to make them feel better about their dead son. But, it's what it is. It is what it is.
The other thing that's really exciting and nonsense is this elementary school story where, I mean, I like the story because I got in trouble a lot in grade school and in high school because it was like, do this thing that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, why don't we just do this other thing? Like, don't use DOS, for example. It's like, but the fastest way for me to do this thing is by using DOS, this other thing that you're asking me to do. So let's use DOS. And this school teacher has been dismissed. So
well, this is the thing that they didn't want the students to do.
Yeah.
And that was consume candy canes. Why?
Because the shape is the letter J.
And what does J stand for?
Jesus, obviously.
So this is...
it's also worth pointing out the principal didn't want them to use the colors red and green. They have been dismissed. Elkhorn,
Nebraska, which is surprising. You would think Nebraska would maybe have a little more Christian-friendly type of... But, there was a Jennifer Sinclair, principal at this elementary school, passed out a memo and didn't want any sort of, religion in the school system.
That doesn't seem unreasonable.
That's fine. I think religion is definitely something for home because... Imagine how angry some of the parents would be if you showed up and you were just like, oh, let's do some voodoo. Santeria. It's Santeria week. Bring a chicken. So that kind of makes sense. But to ban candy canes, because has anybody ever actually are the evil candy cane makers? It's like, yes, let's spread Jesus. They'll never suspect it.
And also the colors red and green. Like this is like overboard.
But red and green stood for like the resurrection, and I didn't get that part at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. That if that was ever true, it is no longer true.
I mean, you think this is just like a really disturbed individual who's sitting at home, like staring at, like rocking back and forth. It's like, I see the candy canes. I understand what they're doing.
Yeah, if you're asking if they've collectively lost their minds, then yes, I would agree that collectively they've lost. You can have these things without having any kind of religious component. This is the type of person who, when there's a zero tolerance policy on drugs, it's like you can't have a Tylenol even if your parents are like, he gets headaches sometimes. We give him baby aspirin or Tylenol or whatever. And it's like, no drugs. It's like, no, that doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And it's impossible to separate Christianity from Christmas. I mean, it's just, yes, it's become a corporate holiday. Sure. But it's part of it. It's part of the story, right? And I'm the furthest thing from a Christian. I got nothing in this fight. But it's just ridiculous to try and ruin the students' good time.
We're literally living the skit from Seinfeld. Was it Seinfeld that came up with the Krampus holiday? Not Krampus, but I can't remember what it was. It was like, we will not celebrate it and it will not be a thing. I think that was Seinfeld. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, let's talk about the Linux Foundation. Now, you know, you might want to, if you want to put out some charitable money, right?
It's that time of year.
You got some money burning a hole in your pocket.
Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Can you claim this on your taxes?
I believe you can because it's a nonprofit.
So there you go. You know, you want to give some money out. Hey, why not spread the word about open source, right? Because they're going to take that money and they're going to put it back into the Linux community. They're going to, you know, maybe develop some video drivers, do some awareness. I'm pretty sure that's what they would do with it.
Note, 100% of donations received go to funding diversity programs.
What?
Wait, and donations to the Linux Foundations are not generally deductible by U.S. taxpayers.
Oh. So let me get this straight. I don't get any tax benefits, and you're not going to put it toward actual open source work.
Well, when you put it that way. That's why it's in the nonsense section. Now it makes sense.
So, yeah, maybe think twice before doing that.
Speaking of other nonsense, this has got to be the dumbest thing Apple has done.
Well, no, because let's talk about it. Apple has removed the strategy game Afghanistan 11 by Slytherin from the App Store because the Taliban are the enemies.
And
now,
it's not just that's not the only game that Apple has removed from that company.
That's what I was just about to tell you. You said this is the dumbest thing, but they've already done this.
Yes.
So before that, it was the Confederacy.
Yeah.
They have a lot of Civil War games that are very historically accurate. You can't have the flag.
No. Ironically, this game, like that particular one, Afghanistan 11, is less about warfare and more about political solutions and trying to win over the hearts and minds of the people as like a strategy game. But this company is insanely historically accurate for what it is. And a lot of educators have said that these games are actually a very good way for students to experience or be immersed in whatever the conflict was and whatever the context of this was. So I definitely think Apple has gone more than one step too far in this scenario, trying to police this kind of stuff. It's almost, I was thinking about this, the Kitten Academy. I was like, we have no SADs. That is basically the stance that Apple is going for with the App Store. It's like, we will we will have no SADs on.
But it's just no conflict.
Yeah.
It's not no SADs. But also, I mean, I've played these games, but I wonder if they're doing incredible historical accuracy, are they even weaving a story that paints the Americans as the moral high ground there? Like, you could make a game where the Taliban is the enemy, but you could make the Americans look like the bad guys.
Yeah.
Like an invading force even. So, yeah, that's a bit heavy-handed. And what is it like remember the old Saturday morning cartoons where the way they would get around it is that all the bad guys were just robots? Because we need hyper violence, right? That's what the kids want to see. But they can't kill anything, so just always robots.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it definitely seems like Apple is not a very subtle company. Like, they don't understand subtlety and nuance. Everything must be ham-fisted and sledgehammered. Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. They did relent on the Confederate flag thing, so maybe they'll see reason on this. You know what, though? It turns out I'd never heard of these games, but now I'm kind of interested.
Yeah.
So it's a great advertisement for Slytherin. Isn't that a Harry Potter thing, though? I think I would have to not play their games just based on that alone. Now, one thing I know about you is you are a huge 2 Milli fan.
I didn't understand this article at all.
Like, we'll be riding around and it's just constant 2 Milli lyrics. Like, Wendell, please.
I understand the Fortnite part of this. So rapper 2 Milli sues Fortnite over a cribbed dance move. So the whole like dances in Fortnite, like when you win or salute or whatever, they put his dance in Fortnite and he's suing.
Here's a nice illustration of it. So the amazing thing about this, like, this is ridiculous. I don't think it's fair that you can sue over a dance move, right? I mean, that's sort of just like human culture.
What about the moonwalk? Because he got a patent on that.
That's ridiculous too. So maybe they do have a legal standing for it, but in my mind, that's not something you should be able to have as intellectual property. But that's not the most disturbing thing about this story. The most disturbing thing about this story is it's $5. Some of you idiots are paying $5 American to dance in a video game.
And instead, you could be paying $2 or less for the Level 1 Patreon.
Buying one of these fine water receptacles. Not for $5. But yeah, a couple of other people that we've never heard of have weighed in on this. And most people are supporting him, saying, yeah, he needs to be paid.
I think it is actually possible on some level to get some kind of protections for some dance moves.
But how basic can you go? Like, can I just get a patent on, swinging my hips?
No, I think,
how about the twerk?
I think the Michael Jackson patent is actually like the whole dance plus the shoes and the mechanism.
Can I patent the twerk?
I don't think so.
What about the booty clap?
No. But what about like line dancing, where it's a complex series of moves?
The Gangnam Style? Remember how hot that was?
That one.
You think he owns that?
That one might be complicated enough. Can you imagine the Supreme Court figuring that out? Like going before Kavanaugh, and he's just like, "What am I even looking at here?"
It's like, no, Your Honor. You can clearly see that she did not drop the booty beneath the knees. It's totally different.
You know what else is totally different? Smartphone cameras versus DSLR. Although Samsung would like to have you believe otherwise.
And this is not totally different from that thing Samsung did before.
The Verge headline is Samsung caught again using a DSLR photo to advertise its smartphone cameras. So it seems to be the hot thing for Samsung to say, look at this picture that we captured from our smartphone. Isn't it amazing? But it's somebody else's photo even. Like they didn't even hire their own photographer.
Yeah, last time it was they were holding the camera up, but they weren't taking the picture. And the wide shot, I don't know who took that shot though. That was a leaker. They show the big giant zoom lens on the DSLR, and they touched it up. This was just somebody else took this picture. She blew the whistle because she was like, that's my picture. Now they did buy it. They didn't break any laws, but they are misrepresenting themselves here. She took it with. I don't think they mentioned what camera it was, but she's a professional photographer who's selling on these sites, so you can imagine it's something really nice. Bad Samsung. This one.
Speaking of bad Samsung, let's talk about bad Tom Cruise.
This is ridiculous, but he's not wrong.
It's over. Now Tom Cruise has set his sights on motion smoothing, the TV effect that makes film look like soap operas. It's only a matter of time before you tweak the settings. So he's talking about interpolation, like frame interpolation, because TVs used to be weird and slow, and so they would draw every other line, and then on the next frame they would draw the frames in between that, and then on the next frame they would draw the original set of frames. So instead of just one line and then the very next line and the very next line, it skipped one every time, and it alternated which set it skipped depending on if it was an odd or even frame.
This actually is a more true to life, like higher frame rate looking thing. They call it the soap opera effect because if you've ever noticed soap operas don't have that film quality. Like what's film shot in like 32 frames or 36?
24.
Is it 24? So film is actually low FPS and it gives it that look. And that's the way they want it to look, even though they shoot digitally these days. And your HD TV will kind of fix that. And they don't want that. This article, if you guys read this, if you got extra time, read this article. Stewart Heritage, you should quit writing right now. Oh my God. The attempts at humor just made my skin crawl. Oh.
Speaking of things that make my skin crawl.
You love 2 Mil, but you hate Soldier Boy. I also know that
yeah.
about you.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we have to like calm down, dude. It's okay.
Ever since that one time he outbid me on something on Alibaba.
And I think probably you're going to be vindicated here, though, because his newest product looks pretty bad.
The headline from Newsweek is rapper Soulja Boy has released a new handheld game console, and it looks terrible. It literally looks like something he found from China that he could put his name on and be like, look, I'm doing a product.
Now, here's the most interesting thing. It lists all of these other kinds of game consoles. So, are these ROMs?
Did somebody not brief him on how this works?
Now, I've heard of people trying to sell equipment with ROMs pre-installed. It didn't work out for them.
Yeah, especially with Nintendo involved. We had that like $13 million settlement. Oh, he's gonna get Nintendo'd so hard.
Even emulation is not okay because the licensing agreements for most emulators do not allow you to pre-package them on your device.
Yeah.
So now it could be that these are not ROMs and they're just those like really terrible like
Breakout clone,
Moonlander and all
Moonlander
that stuff.
clone, yeah.
But 3,000 of them. Now, if you remember back in the day, they used to sell those little. They were like the early Liquid Crystal 7-segment games. You remember those?
Oh yeah.
And they would be like 500 games, but it was, like 5 games with 100 difficulty levels. So there might be some of that in here. There are no details about exactly what games you get. Not really a ton of detail about the hardware. Just these pictures, which
I guarantee you he has not licensed any Neo Geo ROMs.
that's a 3-inch screen. But if you're like, well, I'm not ready to commit to that, you can also get the Soldier Watch.
Oh Lord.
Again, no, it's $100 for the Soldier game, by the way. So you can get
Bad Chinese products gone wrapper.
a Raspberry Pi, a shell, one of those plastic shells. Those are ubiquitous, and a little screen and a battery. You could probably get that for $50, right?
Probably not even.
And I'm saying you're buying one of each, not at scale. And then you could load all your own ROMs and emulators, and you could have a way nicer product.
I'm pretty sure you can get a way nicer product right now directly from AliExpress.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's been a while since the Tide Pod Challenge.
I think we know what happened with all these rappers and their crazy ideas lately.
You think they're sampling the Tide Pods?
I think they're sampling the Tide Pods, and we know why.
Well, when a bad thing happens, the collective memory begins to erode rapidly, right? And before you know it, we're right back making our same mistakes. And it seems like Greeley King Soopers, I've never heard of that. I think it's a Colorado, some sort of Colorado store. Now, you can't quite see, I can't scroll down because this has got like an anti-ad block thing that we had to work around. But let's just take a look at the picture here. Oh,
It's Tide Pods opposite candy.
Now, back here, we've got a brightly colored orange bag that contains delicious candies. Here we have a brightly colored orange plastic container which contains poison. So you can kind of understand where some people were somewhat alarmed when they went into this store.
Colorado has a creative way of dealing with non-English speaking residents.
And yeah, well, you bring up a good point. I mean, you could argue like, who's going to be stupid enough? But I guess if you can't read it.
Yeah. Shame on you, whatever grocery
And they
store
do
this
also
is.
smell delightful.
They really do.
Yeah.
They really do smell edible.
So yeah, just pro tip: if you're running a store, maybe the laundry aisle and any kind of food aisle should be separated. You know what? Put the dog food between those two. A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
You'll get like food, pet food, and then chemicals.
That's a sort of spectrum of edible things.
Yeah.
Very edible, somewhat edible, not edible.
I mean, if you really want to be safe, move to the other side of the store. But I get how like when you're doing your staple food shopping, you're going to pick up your laundry supplies as well. It's a convenience thing, I guess. But,
Makes sense.
But not the same aisle.
That's it. That's it for us. Next week is going to be crazy.
This is the 17th, right? So
Yep.
the week after, is that the Christmas week?
That is Christmas week. We don't know what our news schedule is going to be for Christmas week, but we'll see.
And for those of you who are wondering, Chris is at another wedding.
I was playing with her hair bob all day.
I don't know how many
lost it,
weddings
though.
this was. That's not a hair bob.
She left that in the studio, though. This is from our gift guide, which you should totally go check out. Oh, I've broken it.
That would be funny if you know how like they do the gag where you saw somebody's cane 90% of the way. Like if we could set that up to fail the next time she goes canoeing.
It just floats away.
Set it up so that it fails after about 50 strokes when she's out in the middle. All right, yeah. So maybe we'll tweet our Christmas schedule.
Check out the Level 1 store. It's your last chance to buy gifts because it's literally Monday. It snuck up on you. It's too late.
Imagine how good it would feel when your family member picks this up and they're like, oh, this is a nice... what is L1? See you next week.